Nathan, my friend, good to have you back.
Thank you.
Good to see you. And you, my friend, are quite the impressive backyard garage electrical engineering scientific mind and developer, and you've been doing so much, and it's all applicable to everything the rest of us are doing. And I myself have been delving lately into the electron flow and the electrical engineering side more of things, and the electrical breakdown of matter, especially in my electrolysis reactions. And it all ties in together, and there's so much to it. And you're a lot further along on other aspects of understanding charged particle density, the flow, the fields, the field flow and interactions of it, and engineering it. So I have a lot of questions trying to understand what I'm looking at and what I'm doing. So I'm turning to you now, and specifically with Tesla coils and the fields that they form and interact with each other, and how you've been developing that, and then the one wire circuit between them. And do you want to just explain a bit of what you're doing and what you figured out so far?
So basically, let's just start with the simple things. If you're going to have an amp and a volt, you're going to have a resonance to it. Just some kind of frequency, right? So what I found is it's easy if you put something in resonance to create other things in resonance with it. So everything out there works that way. So no matter what it is, whether it's a simple transformer or whether it's another Tesla coil, all you have to do is resonate at the correct frequency. Now, if you create an item that has more than one frequency, which has a ring, you're able to hit any one of those values on that ring and turn that coil on. You have to have no primary to it. It just has to be a winding of wire. That's it. It's got to match the resonance frequency. So whether it's a tuning fork turning on a transformer or my Tesla coil turning on a tuning fork, it really makes no difference. It's just about the resonance frequency. It must produce a ring. As soon as it produces the ring, you're in. You're in the game now. Now you can turn things on. That's the whole scientific aspect to it. So when you do that, you're not just turning it on in order to get a light bulb to light. You're producing plasma for it. And what happens is, in a secondary that's not attached to your primary running circuit, is you get a bipolar aspect to it. A null zone in the center. You get a vortex coming out the top and a vortex coming out the bottom. It's very important that you remember that, because it means that you're not just building something to turn something on. You're making a ring in order to pull the vortex into the coil. You're pulling the energy from the room into the coil itself in order to produce that plasma. Now, that can be used as anything you want it to be used as long as you do not break the resonance frequency of it. The second that you break it is the second it stops working. So let's move that to a practical application. If I wanted to use a bit, and it's basically just a toroid, ferrite core, and I wanted to produce energy without it knowing that I'm pulling energy from it. Now I run the wire in, it goes around the toroid and it goes back to the negative on your battery, right? Now I'm going to take in two. I'm going to bring one in, say the first one's 22 turns on this side. This one over here is 11. Then I go 11 on the next one, right? Well, as it sees it, if this one over here that your primary runner resonates at the same frequency as these two equal, which means they're in halves, so that when those equal out, this will not see this. It will basically ring it, and then the ring itself turns the other one on, and then you can pull the energy and use it while the other one just simply returns back to the battery. It's an over unity circuit, which is based on resonance.
My God, what you just explained is the key of Tesla's technology, the ringing, the resonant frequencies, the multiple. You said you have to have the multiple resonant frequencies with or a cup resonance. So two multiple.
It's just got to create the ring. One by itself doesn't create the ring that well.
Yeah, so multiple coils of resonating essentially.
So basically, you have a primary that's basically working on frequency. You think it's all volts and amps. It's not. It's that frequency that's the most important. That's what's turning on your air core secondary in your Tesla coil, right? So it rings. This one rings back. This one rings. This one rings back, right? And it just goes for that. People see it like it goes like this, right? It's real simple. Now you understand why a secondary by itself becomes a bipolar one, because you're picking up primary and secondary. They're both the same ring. Now you're exposing that by showing both. Now you're able to pull it. So if you simply said, all right, I'm going to take these two sides of my bipolar now, secondary by itself, all I have to do is create a Y spark gap. 2 on one side, 1 coming into it. Now, anything I have on this side, I can pull out. It's now my energy for free. All of it. I don't have to share it. It's basically giving it to me. So I can now take it out. Or you can make a more traditional bit. Now, you can still do it with generators. It just takes longer and they spin and it sucks to deal with everything that comes with it. Or you can just make it solid state, man, and have a good day. In about 20 minutes, you got yourself a nice transformer that is the Tesla coil ringer that you see in his patent. See, a lot of people don't understand that. They think it's a secondary coil. Jarvis and I went over this together, and it's that ringer that is the bit. That's the part of over unity you have to see. You have to be able to pull from it while it's still running the main circuit. And most of the things go back to the battery. So it's basically a mirror. Here on one side of the mirror, you know what I mean, is your starter. Here on this side of the mirror is your amount of energy you can pull out of it. It's pretty simple once you get it down. The harder part is now you're going to start using geometry. Once you start getting to geometry, man, now we can create some cool stuff. So I was talking today earlier, if I told you to look at a beehive, right? What would you tell me, Bernie? What does it look like?
It is in total resonance, actually. It's like the hexagonal building that's it's in a lattice, like a super lattice formation that they engineering that they make it. It's like a superstructure essentially.
Okay, so one of the things that it does as well is it tapers in, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You ever noticed that? So every single one of those hexagons tapers in, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So if I were to put a winding on the outside of that, what happens naturally to that?
You'd get some charge, I would think.
Hold on. A ring works by going back and forth and back and forth. But it doesn't actually do that except for on your oscilloscope. It goes like this.
A vortex. Okay.
It's a natural vortex at that point. You just set that up in the right way and you're pulling energy into it by creating the ability for a vortex to form. Now you start looking at what they're doing by layering in thin amounts of, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on the word. Basically, it's a thin membrane. Every time they do that and they put another one under it, it creates a resonating chamber inside of it. Now, think about this. I want to create a singularity. How do I want to do it? I'm going to take that same hexagonal shape. I'm going to take the same cone it gave with me. And now I'm going to wind my coil based on that cone. And I'm going to put them at different directions from each other. And now I'm going to create it where one goes off, then the other one. One goes off, and then the other one, right? So we constantly want it repeating. In the center, I will create a singularity, which is basically your plasmoid. And it will allow you to put a monster amount of energy into it. That's the understanding of that whole thing. They only build them in like halves. There's not too many big circular ones. When you get to them, they're hot as heck. And they have a ton of energy coming out of them. So there's an understanding here of geometry in coils as well. Sean does it in his coil. So if you wrap a single Tesla coil that's straight up and down with the same amount of windings as you do a one that's a pyramid shape, right? What happens?
The same amount of windings is key. Does it stay in resonance, or is it different because of the geometry?
So it pulls off twice the energy because it's in the geometry.
Okay.
Again, why? Because, like I said, it vortexes the cone. Because it's vortexing the cone, it's hitting the harmonics of it. Now, in that geometry, if you change it to get a little bit more here, a little bit less here, now you're going to start hitting the harmonics all the way. So when you see that ring, it goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, just like this, right? Gotcha. Now you're starting to hit every single one of them as you're doing your vortex, right? Every time you hit it, it's a multiplier. So think of it that way. You're only getting 2 times right now, but once you start to put the sacred geometry in there and do it right, guess what? It's time to amplify the living daylights out of this thing. Now, Tesla did it like this. He put 2 of them together, pointing towards each other, one cone down, one cone up. What happens? Once you do that and force the energy together, it spans out this way. Because the Tesla coil is longitudinal, okay? That means that the energy that comes out of it when it hits together is going to go transverse on you. Now you're going to get a massive amount of energy. It's every time you run your Tesla coil, you're dropping the rock in the pond. But you're not just dropping it. You're picking it back up. Then you're going to drop it again. Then you're picking it back up and dropping it again. See, that's your spring right there. It's your longitudinal spring.
Your
waves, are your transverse. So it comes out, right? But the waves come out at a certain distance from each other. See, the Tesla coil itself is scalar. So it's always going to build out, drop off, build out, drop off, and keep going. It's a scalar energy because it's radiant. When I say radiant, it is literally radiation. And it's just a low-level radiation. Once you understand that's not the same energy you're putting into it, and that you've already changed the field, now you can start to understand why one field can hold in another. Because they're different types of energy altogether. It has nothing to do now with your magnetic core that you think it does. That's why understanding that it came out of frequency instead of magnetics or, volts and amps, now you start to understand it's building something different. So now when you add temperature to that, this is where it blows your mind, okay? When you decide to add temperature to this, if I use a static field, it's still in the magnetic field family, okay? It goes from one side to another, from a massive magnetic field to a static electric field on the other side. It's still in the same family. Now, what you want to do is bring up the static field. Then you want to take a cold radiant field, which basically means you're going to put a rod down the center of your Tesla coil, and you're going to force that scalar wave to build inside that rod. Now you're pushing it in. You don't want heat. Go ahead.
I suspect what you are talking about is directly related to magnetic flow and currents, and like that this is the engineering side that is completely oblivious to modern day electrical engineering, yet it's like 3/4 of the actual like electrical or charged particle motion and forces that are at play, right? Like that.
If Lorenz had this, then his whole theory would be proven right. It is the opposite side of standard magnetics that they teach you. That's what you're dealing with here. You're looking for a radiant field, which basically means the magnet will not interact with it. It will not make that same energy that you produce as you swing that magnet around. Doesn't react with this. It's different. It's just completely different. It's like two ships in the night. You know what I mean? They don't do the same thing. It's what allows you to break Lenz's law. So as soon as you pull it where it can't create heat, you break Lenz's law. Lenz's law is based on heat. That magnetic field you're getting is heat.
You have cold electricity right there. That's where you get the cold electricity.
Because it's room temperature and below. Yeah, so
and
it's more efficient because it has zero losses.
It doesn't have resistance in the flow. Like that's where the heat loss is, and that's where the majority of electrical charge is lost and energy is lost in the transition to heat. So when you're right, so that is the right there. You have identified that is the crucial mistake, whether intentionally or unintentional at the time, but intentionally kept ever since in our electrical grid engineering aspects, because they're like, oh, we need to use less energy. Oh, we're dying. And it's like, no, right there. If you re-engineer that one aspect, it's like electrical current use goes down by like probably at least 90, but I'm guessing like a 99 or even more like percent in like the flow and the waste of the lost energy from the friction or the resistance into heat, right? So it's like you take all of that out, and if everything was just based and engineered and built off of this cold current, the cold electrical charge flow, most devices, especially like computers, electronics, they all work off of that sort of energy. And that I believe like the DC powered motors can also work off of that. So it's like you don't need to get for that work the amperage, the heat, the hot electrical flow and movement that it goes along with it, and which requires so much more energy and waste, right?
Well, I think all the computers still work on hot electricity. Does now. What we're looking at here is any overheating device.
And stuff. Yeah, they are. But could they be engineered on coal? I don't know.
Oh, you could. It doesn't like to build out that way. So you got to understand what you're dealing with here. You're dealing with a radiant field. It doesn't build out like a magnetic field. It builds out like gas. So as you're sitting here, you are literally going to have to, how do I say this? Take your magnetic field, take it in the lowest form, which is static. Take your radiant field in as cold as you can get it. Force them to go together. Force them to create plasma. That's the whole goal of having this. So that right there is your anti-gravity field. So that's not what they really teach you. They teach you.
You said as cold as possible, too, right? And in outer space or whatever it is, it's cold as F, so that this function like exponentially increases once you're out in the so-called vacuum of space or whatever. That's not what it is, though. But
but you got to understand, it's not forcing cold into it. When you're dealing with something like a 0-point energy coil, it's not forcing the cold in. You can't take liquid nitrogen and cool it down like you can a magnet. It doesn't work that way. It's the energy of the room pulling into it that takes the room temperature energy that brings down down and cools it. So
that is such a crucial
effect.
aspect of energy engineering and magnetism and the flow of heat, energy, radiation through, and that's not what is at all understood, and yet it is the core part of both temperature flow as well as magnetism. And like that, magnets are magnetic fields, and magnets, the hotter you get, the weaker the magnetic field, right? The colder it gets, the stronger. And then it went through this endothermic reaction that is a magnetic like energy reaction. And that's where the heat energy, temperature energy count from the environment transfers in through the magnetic field of something. The
thing is, you don't even really want to use the total magnetic field. You want to use the static portion. So let me just explain this for people who do not know the scale. On one side, you're going to get highly magnetic, which means your amperage is really high and your voltage is really low. On the other side, you're going to get static, which means that your voltage is really high, but your amperage is really low, right? Do you know what the difference in between it is, Bernie? It's simply the frequency. You see, when your amps are really high, your frequency is really low. But when your frequency is really high, your voltage is really high. See, and it works both ways. You can make this thing work however you want to make it work, the flow between the two. And if you don't understand that scale and how it works back and forth, this whole concept is going to be hard to deal with, because you have to be able to transverse from a simply magnetic field to a static electricity field. And you have to be able to do it by simply controlling two things. You need your frequency, and then you're going to need your duration cycle. Your duration cycle slows down the circuit so that your amps pick up because of the heat. See, a lot of people don't understand this. If you take a Tesla coil, right, and you open it top to bottom, it goes about 4 feet. Put a cap on the top and bottom of it. It'll go over 5 feet. Why? Because I created heat in between that chamber. I closed it off. Now it pushes further. What happens when I put sand in it? Well, as that sand heats up, we go further. We no longer are creating plasma out of this thing. We're creating a big radiant field. There's a big difference in understanding how that scale works. So when I tell you there's a temperature differential, if I wanted to create the outside of the coil at room temperature, but the inside I want colder, I just put a negative radiant field in the center and then a regular magnetic field on the outside. Now I can control the temperature and make it swirl all day long. All day, get colder. We can sit here and we can put our little temperature gun on it and watch it drop in the room.
We need to do that, and we need to engineer that aspect. And that, so the term free energy is often massively misused and misunderstood, but when actually truly understood and applied into the engineering, this is why I'm bringing up like the crucial part of the transfer of energy of the surrounding environment of the temperature into the magnetic field of it. And that right there, once properly understood and utilized and like transferred in from the magnetic field and flow into the electrical field and flow of the engineering, it's like you'll be able to get unlimited free energy from the environment by pulling in the radiant energy, by creating this vortex of sucking the hotter energy into the cooling of the magnetic field flow of it, and just being powered off of that, right? And that was essentially what Tesla was doing, and what the atmospheric electricity sort of thing was a part of, and the how far off the current AC grid system and our current technology of electricity compared to what it could be and should be and is like intentionally kept away from, is that we've removed 99% of energy from being able to be transferred into a usable electrical energy, right? And that it's all around. It's just like they've intentionally been like, no, you can't touch that or use that or try to convert that energy, even though it's right there and available. And the law says that you can't destroy energy, you can only convert it from one to another. That anything that's an open system that's taking energy from the environment into the system and using that and creating the differential and flow, that's your free electrical energy from
they also tell you in the same physics that energy cannot be created and it cannot be destroyed. And in that, they screwed themselves, because then what are you doing? Well, you're basically just creating an environment for a vortex to form, aren't you? You're not making the energy, you're creating the environment. They just told you that answer as soon as they told you that, right? Because if you can't create it, why are you working so hard? All you need to do is create the vortex. Now you just pull the energy in. It's free. Now, what they also told you was, if we live in a sea of energy, guess what? Now I can pull it all day long. And over unity is no longer about the device you're working on. It's about the environment you're in. You see, that whole law right there, they screwed themselves over in physics and not understanding it properly. You see, you can take all the energy from the world and pull it in right through a vortex. It's that simple. That's all you have to do. You know, if you simply put up a antenna and then you put a rod into the ground, you can pull energy from both sides. All you got to do is create the pump. Tesla coil's a pump. All you got to do is create it. And then we're in business. You know what I mean? I could put a Tesla coil right on top of a rod in the ground and it'll produce energy. That's it.
And to circle back to the very start of your presentation, what you're talking about is the key is getting them to ring in a system that's in harmonic resonance with itself. And therefore, you're not having to connect them physically and pump that electrical flow by solid connection to them. They're just already in that harmonic resonance and working together and connected through, well, frequency and resonance, and that getting them to ring. And that is, I guess, the part that we don't understand that is intentionally lost. Like, can you get more into explaining that aspect of it, please?
Well, okay. So there's two sides and theories about this. One, you can think it runs through the air. Two, it can run right through the ground. See, this is a missing aspect of it. Once you make it a radiant energy, it's game over. You can put it right into the ground. And now the ground itself, if you put it into the water table, now the water itself becomes electrified. Now you can transfer that energy anywhere. You see, that's the point here. I did an experiment in my backyard with a 10-foot by 10-foot pond. I could take my Tesla coil, run the rod down the center, throw the rod right into the water. On the other side of that 10-foot pond, it lights up. I could just shove light bulbs right into the ground. And it lights up better from the ground because now I can pull the energy of the ground because it's negative energy below our feet. So Sean did a coil and he was pulling the negative on it, right? Normally, when you do something like that, if you put the ground up next to it, you get the thing going shooting towards the ground, right? The energy shoots towards the ground so it could be grounded out. Because he had a negative coil, the energy was coming from the ground to the coil, and not in little bits either. Big white sparks with plenty of amperage in them from the ground to the coil, not the other way around. It's a massive difference. You could pull that energy right out of the ground. You just have to have a pump and the right way to make it move to pump it out of the ground.
See, that is key. And this is one of the things I wanted to get out of you tonight that I was pondering for the last couple of days. And I was taking, like, deconstructing our electrical grid and electrical flow and AC and DC and ground, and then also the atmospheric differential pressure from above and static charge, and that the two key parts that are missing and crucial and that have intentionally been taken out of our AC electrical grid system and technology is how to utilize and maximize and engineer the atmospheric differential from the ion field and density and the ground frequency density and charge and how it works, and putting that into usable electrical current flow. And that it's...
But think about it. You got a massive spark coming out of the ground, right? Now, all you need to do is put a capacitor in between it. Divert it with a capacitor and start putting more capacitors there. And it's just storage and storage and storage. That's it. Let me throw a curveball to you. So now take just a coil of winding. Just spare winding, you want your Tesla coil off, you got a 5-foot spool. Now run that as your ground. Guess what? The energy still comes out of it towards the Tesla coil. You see, it's a misnomer to think all of the time that energy isn't all around it. It's where you allow the vortex to be created, it'll pull from it. You see, that winding itself just ran around that one bobbin, right? Well, the vortex created right above it and right below it in order to put the energy into it to pull towards that Tesla coil. You see, that should drive anyone nuts. It's not connected to anything. It's just a spool of wire. Why would it have so much energy in it? Well, now you get to the understanding. You're not building energy. You're pulling it from the environment.
Yes, right? And that... See, and the next step is that you build a bunch of those, and then we're learning how to actually engineer and utilize and create the flow and like the maximization of this new energy into usable circuits that then can have the resistance and like be runner equipment, right? It's that there's...
Just break the symmetry twice. Full bridge rectifier twice. When you're in high frequency, make sure you have high frequency diodes. If you want more amperage in that, put slow moving diodes in there, and it'll create more amps because it'll slow it down. Basically, just like a natural, what do you want to call it? Duty cycle. It's a natural duty cycle when you put in slower ones. So then the amperage will go up and the voltage will go down. But then when you put in high frequency diodes, the voltage goes through the roof and it just flows, and you'll be able to fill caps. Now, however you want to do it, Bernie, we can do both. We can hook them back together and create voltage and amperage. It's beautiful, man. That's something you always wanted. The high amount of volts and the high amount of amps in the end, it's just going to be a mix. You can't break that law.
See, and like these are the crucial things that we are going to be doing together this summer, because I want to make a couple like circuits, like systems, and like I guess 2 or 3, probably 3, because it's like I'll do 2 different Tesla coil sets that like get them ringing in resonance, but like with 3 or 4 or more coils per system of like the same resonance, so the same size or whatever, so that like have there'll be 2 grids, and that I want to try, like you're doing with like the one wire between them and stuff, and that so you have two parallel. Ooh, so the second one would be a fit like one half, right? So it'll be, or
So hold on. There's two ways to look at this. There's a hot side that will structure the water. There's a cold side that removes the structure from the water.
so
Now, which one do you want?
We'll need 3 then.
So it breaks it either way. So you may not know this, but as soon as you put the positive and negative in there, you're structuring that water.
Yeah, absolutely. I can demonstrate. I have thousands of different pictures of examples.
Oh, the ice cube.
Yes, for sure.
Oh, so the negative on the Tesla coil, by the way, putting the rod down the center will break that structure. It takes like, if you consider it like a pipe, you're creating the pipe with the positive. I'm expanding the pipe with the negative. That's the way it works.
Yeah, and so another aspect I want to test is different, like ferrite or magnetic, like cores, but also potentially like maybe even donuts, like two Tesla coils that are in resonance but really close together, and then like a iron or like ferromagnetic core connecting them, like donut connecting them, sort of thing. And then so it's essentially like creating a transformer with the Tesla coils, and then having a couple of them, like so that you have like 4 or 5 of these systems, and then being able to engineer the one wire system or circuit that's between them, and then do a second additional identical but either half the size coils of the same amount. So you got 2 parallel circuits of this. And
you want a MIG. You're describing a MIG, you know that, right?
A what?
A MIG. Yeah, MEG.
Oh,
MIG.
okay.
So, what was it, Tom Byron or Tom something? I don't remember the name. Sorry, Brit. Anyway, he describes the MIG, and someone will tell me his name. Anyway, he describes the MIG, and it's basically building a vortex inside of an iron core transformer with both sides being resonantly equal to each other on both windings. But then you can tap into it with other windings at quarter or half the value to each one of them. Bearden is the one that I believe it. Yeah. So anyway, that's the MIG. That's what you're wanting to do.
Well, that's what I like figured out in my mind and just like doing electrical like over the last couple of days, and that like, but that you have 2 of them, and then but on a larger scale in the room, like the size that you're doing, sort of thing, and like then making a circuits, 2 parallel circuits out of them.
I mean, we're trying to power a house with this thing. That's a big thing, man.
Oh,
These things are like 12 inches long for my smallest one, and then like 2 feet for a bigger one.
Oh, yes, sir. And it's like I'd probably do it where I'd set them up where in like parallel, where it's like the bigger ones would be on the ground, and then I'd try to put the smaller ones like on the roof or like directly above them, sort of thing, and like kind of create like the parallel circuits, and then be able to run a whole bunch of other like further.
I'll be honest with you, Bernie. Pick a frequency you like. Okay, in the kilohertz, pick a frequency you like. It just to make it a reasonable size coil, because we start getting into regular hertz frequencies, it's going to be quite big.
So this is the next step, and the whole purpose of it is so that you have like the 2 of them, and that like you're saying, you have them ringing, so that you have a couple different them in resonance with a couple others, and then also have taking this experiment purpose to the next level is some of the vortex coils, and then getting them in the same system and in ringing frequency. And then it's like you've got this grid and this system, and that from there, it's like should be able to power a lot of plasma stuff, because you'd be having a huge field and then a grid out of it, and be able to experiment and use and like finally engineer cold currents and like flow and the field of it all, and understanding like
Now, let me tell you the downside of energy in the air, because we didn't get to discuss it. As soon as you put this thing in resonance and you're at 20 volts, right? And then the secondary coil goes off, you're going to have to drop your voltage. You will not be able to stand in that room. All the metal in that room gets hot. It is now RF hot. Flat out. Everything. So as soon as you touch it, it burns your skin. You have to reduce the amount of energy you put into it, because again, you're now playing with the environment of your room. You're not just playing with this coil. As soon as you start putting one or two in resonance, you're now playing with the environment of your room. So everything around you, you're going to be burning your fingers quite a bit. Okay.
So I would be grounding those to salt water, like jars and buckets and stuff, and that's a whole.
You're going to walk around glowing, is what you're going to do.
Well, but designing it to, also, I'm intending to start engineering, designing, and using a lot of saltwater battery aspects of. Into these circuits and purposes of it. And it's like you were going a bit into it there with what you're doing. And I just want to take that to the next level, because it's already so heavily involved with my own engineering of actual doing saltwater batteries and the structured water batteries, and taking them to like the 3rd and 4th generation stuff, because that's literally what China's doing, and like making breakthroughs of like batteries that last forever and like all this different shit. And it's like there's like new ones coming out every day, and it's actually really easy to do in principle. It's just like you got to make a whole bunch of really, really small stuff, but to do like the usable ones that are like in inches or centimeter parts, where you have like hundreds of pieces or thousands sort of thing, as opposed to like the micro ones with tens of thousands or millions of whatnot, that's where you get to your very small nano or solid state stuff. But anyways, there's so much to it, and it's so practical, easy, and cheap to do. And it's like original electricity with the Leyden jars, and that is something we need to do together, is Leyden jar development of battery properties, because it's like it's electrical ionic charge-ish, isn't it, sort of thing? Like,
you want basically a saltwater battery inside of a Leyden jar with a aluminum on the outside is basically what you're looking for. And then we'll just pull the energy between the inside and outside.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Well, that's pretty easy, because, as soon as you do your reaction, you probably already know this, you don't have to put energy into it. If you can get a saltwater reaction out of it.
I've designed like to like 3rd or 4th generations now, these like sealed generators where the reaction's steady going on for like a couple of years straight. And it's like, it's like they need to be utilized and developed and power things.
Well, see, in salt breaks down and reforms. It breaks down and reforms. It just all depends on time, right?
Exactly.
So I don't know why people don't understand this. Salt is just a crystal. And if you take a different crystal and you put it in water, it still produces energy, and it produces frequencies out of it. Now, frequencies, not one frequency. It's like 6. depending on the geometry structure of that crystal, you're going to get that many frequencies out of it. But it's a ring. It's a predictable thing. So if you pull one frequency, just understand that quarter, half, all the way down. You know what I mean? A third, an eighth, all of it is in there. And then now you can learn how to turn one of those things on. All you got to do is hit all the right frequencies. Or should I say, in a hexagon shape, each one of the oxygen molecules itself represents a frequency in that chain. So if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you have the whole chain, right? Which is exactly your ring in a vortex, is exactly what that is. That's what that crystalline structure is. So if you can wrap your mind around that, then it makes it pretty easy. Everything in this world works on a ring. If you can get it to ring, you can produce energy all day long because it's producing a vortex.
God. Okay, so this is so crucial what you are explaining, and another aspect of what I had been like engineering out in my mind and developing nanotechnology and like my material science products is the ring, that's the getting them in harmonic frequency when you make it, as you make it. And I know how to engineer that, and that's what I want to be developing next.
Nice.
And so it's need to start using or getting like like some transducers or what's like I need to get a little power supply, and I need to get a little is it acoustic generator? I guess.
Oh, you just want a frequency generator.
Yeah. So it's like to start hitting the reactions with three separate ones, like with 3 different types of the frequency input. Like all different experiments, but all like
if you
combined in the end.
Okay, if you build a geometry coil, it'll build the ring for you.
Okay.
Because you have to build the geometry coil. So two wires, right? 2 wires go across from each other, you get a frequency. But now when I run them in the rest of it and I bring it back around to it, and I got 2 wires going this way. Because it's scalar, it builds as different frequencies, because it's different frequencies every time. As you turn it again, you have another frequency that goes on, and again. And then before you know it, you have your hexagon shape in the center. Now you have your ring automatically. But you want to make that thing double-sided. So you want a coil inside of a coil in that experiment so that it rings both ways, one way, then the other way, one way, then the other way. That's what you're looking for in it. So a geometry coil works perfect. I have a hexagon one I just built.
See, that is something else I've done a bit of and had crazy results and want to do even more of. And so I think, so what with the crystal, like what's the static charge or like the piece of electrical that you use to get crystal electricity? What's it called, or measure?
You want piezoelectric?
Piezoelectric. There we go. The piezoelectric.
Well, let's look at how it's formed. In the earth, you have to have a radiant field in order to form it, don't you?
So how do I get a piezoelectric input from to put into the water with like an anode and cathode? And how would I be able to connect that to change the frequency or flow of it? Okay,
so if you want to get to any crystal, what you have to do is, 1, has to go in water. 2, you have to take the negative side of the testicle, which is right down the center, and it'll communicate directly with the crystal. Oh. You could do it with sand. Just take sand, put it in a bucket, drop that line in there, and it automatically amplifies that water because it's now resonating the crystal inside. at a very low resonance because you are not in perfect resonance with it yet. That's it. That's as simple as it gets, Bernie. That's all you have to do. That's why I put it on my site where I'll throw it in the water, man, like 5 light bulbs and make a star in my front yard, because it's literally that easy. That's how it's done, because you got to remember, when it's built out of a negative radiant field, it's telling you something. It's telling you that a negative radiant field communicates with this. Now, wait until you know what I mean. You really want some energy out of it. Pulse it. Pulse wave. Hit it with a pulse wave. As soon as it's resonating, when it gets to each part of the octave that you want, pulse it. And boom, the energy flies out of this thing. So you want to see a little disturbing bolt here, go like this. That's how you do it.
That's exactly what I want to be doing. What do I need to get? What equipment do I need to be doing that next?
Basically, Bernie, Slayer Exciter, test a coil, build the negative one that I do. It's one transistor, it's one resistor, and that's the whole thing. You can run it up to 40 volts, and it'll run all day long cool. Okay? Will not blow up on you. That's it. You probably only want to run it at 5 volts or something like that for what you're doing. I don't know.
Exactly, yeah.
Maybe a little playing around, maybe a little 40, but
eventually, eventually, right? But yeah.
But that's all you got to do. Now, with the Slayer Exciter, it's self-correcting, so the winds on it is based on how much frequency you want in it. So the shorter and smaller the coil with the thicker windings, okay, will shove that thing through the roof. You know what I mean? Terahertz, things like that. If you want to go hertz,
I want to be able to work into the terahertz.
Oh, you're going to be able to do it easily. That's not hard. That's the easy part of a Tesla coil. Getting it into the hertz is the hard part, because now you have to build a big Tesla coil. So when you see Tesla coils, just understand this: the size of them. Do you really think he's in the kilohertz? Because if you do, you need to go check again, because you don't understand Tesla coils. You're in the hertz. He's not playing in kilohertz. He's playing in hertz. See, there's a big difference. So when he says the crystal is activated like life, it's because he's directly playing with that crystal's frequency. He's creating the plasma inside of it. That's the whole point. What are you looking at now?
I love this one. Oops, here we go. The Rosicrucian order, and it is cosmic vibrations, octave, and vibrations per second, starting from 2 going to million, billion, trillion, quadrillion, whatever is above quadrillion. Right, but at a quadrillion, we're in the X-ray, right? That's vibrations per second, and terahertz, I believe, is trillion, right? And that it's essential. So what's crazy about this is the Rosicrucian order's scientific world publication study that they put together in, I think it was like the 70s, somewhere in the 60s to 80s. I don't know what. But this is it. And it's like, it is both, I guess they're doing octaves, measuring the octaves to the vibrations per second. And I guess this is all frequency or EM, right? The fields. And that here, just this section right here is our visible light spectrum I guess that's trillion. So terahertz, quadrillions.
So hold on, Bernie. Is this why they keep telling me it's going to take millions of volts to lift something off the ground? This chart right here?
No, this is the exact opposite. This is the key to how we engineer exact opposite out of that. And then, it's that with Tesla, there's the 3 keys of frequency, vibration, and energy, right?
Okay.
Is that the 3?
I believe it's that. Energy, frequency, and vibration. Yes.
Yeah. And that it's the vibrations per second, which is EM radiation, I guess, right? Like that is the wave. And
so
that
frequency equals 1 over time, or frequency equals I over T. I think sometimes people misunderstand this. Frequency equals I, which is energy, over T, which is time. It's basically just your frequency wave, how fast it'll pulse all the way across. That's it. That's the only thing separating you in this whole thing. That's what that says then. It's just how fast you could get it to the frequency is how fast it goes up in terahertz.
Yeah, and it's how fast the energy is moving through time. And it's on these exponential layers that dimensional boundaries happen. And that it's like the gravitational boundary breaks and is used at this in the quadrillion times per second that energy is moving or slash matter is moving.
Okay. Can I stop you here?
Yeah.
Okay. We're not calculating to move the world. Okay.
No.
Just hear me out. When they start telling you about this high frequency, they're calculating it based on the Earth. They're not calculating based on the bubble you're building. They're trying to tell you we need this much energy to force ramrod this thing up through the Earth in order to lift it, right?
Through the Earth field. And let me explain why. Because you need the 3, and that there are 3. You have to break that field and have yourself in alignment and resonance and ringing with that field. You have to do it with your own, and then the one of like the destination that you're going, and I believe maybe the 4th through space-time, but it's like you have to have those 4 in the harmonic resonance to then be able to engineer the device that either propels you to it or connects to it and brings you there, or there's a few different ways, but it's like that's the key of the 3.
Pull this thing down. I want to explain this to you, okay? Because this is why physics is screwed up. We do not have to play with the energy of the Earth in order to get there. You see, we're going to create a microcosm of the Earth in a field. Now, all I have to create is the opposite side of the field that I'm in. You see, we're in a positive pressure environment with a hot energy field around us, okay? That's it. Now I need to create a cold energy field to change the temperature differential between the two. I move based on where my electricity is forced to one side where the heat is. See, I'm going to create amps in one corner and it's going to move in that direction. That's not what you were just telling me. You have to follow.
The propulsion there, but you have to have a couple more fields, and one of them is to like encase yourself and be like in the same resonance as like the trillion ones or whatever. Because if you're not, when you do the motion or the travel or whatnot, it's like that's where the time aspect is exponentially condensed onto your like biology and own time space. And it's like if you don't have that one in check, that's where it's like you'll turn to dust or an old man or die or a child or like just have horrible
You're going to create a time dilation field. There's no question that you're doing that, but that's also in the gravity well that you're creating in the center. I'm trying to tell you it's something very simple. Go out and take a bubble machine and turn it on. Every bubble breaks gravity. It does not follow the laws of gravity. Put heat into that bubble and it will rise. It does not follow the laws of gravity. It's outside of it. Now, if I create an energy bubble, I am outside the gravitational field of the Earth itself. I just need to direct the energy. That's it. So when I tell you to take a static electricity field, and I tell you to take a radiant field, and I told you to shove them together, I'm telling you, just like Sal Paya has told you, I'm creating a plasma field that goes around in clear plasma that's in order to create that little bubble I need just around my craft. Now, my energy requirement is not the Earth, it's the bubble. Now I don't have to have millions of volts. I don't have to have millions of amps. That bubble violates nature. It violates gravity. See, just like blowing bubbles in the backyard with your kids, man. You go out and look at them. They violate nature all the time.
Okay. So you're the second, like, I would call authority and experience of this that has told me exactly this in the last 2 days. So there's potentially that I have, like, in my mind, one aspect that is unneeded and it is a lot easier. Or like I'm overcomplicating it, I guess, of everything.
Well, we could do the Hutchinson. Would you like to do the Hutchinson anti-gravity? Because it's all about balls to the wall energy. That's what that is.
That one disintegrates matter. It's that it's like we also need to.
Well, yeah, because you're creating plasmoids, not meaning to, right?
Yeah.
Well, the outside is that you want to create small plasmoids or big ones. I mean, look, when you're doing Hutchinson, you're creating giant plasmoids that rip things apart. I mean, it's real simple. You're creating a field around static electricity, which just continues to build in there with resonance. So what are you going to get? You're going to get electrocuted as soon as that plasmoid comes near you. You're done. Your life is over. I don't like to work with things like that because they're life enders. Why not work with something that's easier to work with? And all you have to understand is a field bubble, which has already been created. You can create it right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that difficult.
Okay, and it's the field bubble and then creating multiple of the field bubbles for what you intend to do, sort of thing, and then engineering.
Just one around your craft. And it look, it's like two fields with plasma that builds in the center. That's the way it works. You see, that plasma field is what you guys see as the shiny thing in the sky, the blurry object, the whatever you want to say, transformational object, all that. That's that blurry field. That's that clear plasma.
100%.
You don't have enough energy on the inside to the outside in order to create a colored plasma.
Okay,
so all the light's going to refract through it.
You're absolutely right. And I don't know why in my mind I've had it stuck for the last couple of days that I need 3 of those, like in like a gyroscope.
Because you're thinking of Ashton's airplane. He's got 3. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like it's like that even to the next level where it's like by having 3 gyroscopic bubbles of plasma within themselves, then you could get like anywhere in space time. But so I'm overcomplicating. This is the first step of just the 2-layer fields that create the plasma in between, and that plasma bubble is all we need for
your craft. Yeah. Now, if you want to create teleportation, create the 3. They're going to follow the ring, the vortex. They're going to follow it. Look, there's no getting around it. That plane was ringing. Okay, that's exactly what it was doing. It picked up too much turbulence, started ringing, and plasmoids started getting attracted to it. Plasmoids are real simple to create in nature. All you need to do that is to take a microwave and run it against the radiant field of the Earth. As soon as you do that, you start having a plasmoid. Okay? Because the radiant field will wrap itself right around that energy you're putting into it. That's it. It's as simple as it gets. I mean, do you think the thunderstorm generator is that difficult? All you're doing is creating different spheres in order to create a resonance ring inside there, which then takes the energy and creates a static field inside of it, which then encapsulates it by that radiant field that you built, because it's one inside of the other, which forces the outside to the inside, which creates your radiant energy on the inside to hold it.
Right? And it's all about the plasma fields and plasma field interactions.
It's about knowing which two to hook together, because by themselves, they're pretty junky fields. Think about it. They're pretty junky fields. You can't really do much with them, can you? But together, now they start to make something good.
And it's like when I'm talking, I want to get multiple plasma fields together and then in resonance, and then from that you can engineer some pretty useful things.
Oh, wait till you get to 0-point energy, because then the entire thing that you're building is level upon level upon level of scalar. And all you're doing is the same process. You're holding in the static electricity inside of a radiant field at each level. But when you have 1,500 to 2,000 levels, guess what? Now we got a monster number of energy going in there. That's why the 0-point energy. So let's go a little further. 0-point energy is two vortexes coming together like this, and you're opening it up in the center for a singularity, which presents as a plasmoid. And then everything around it pulls apart and puts together inside the plasmoid. Thunderstorm generator pulls apart every single molecule, puts them back together in a different chain or the same chain coming out. That's as simple as you get.
Right? And like, it's so exciting. It's so key. And it's what I'm specifically. So most of the questions I was asking tonight don't really have anything to do with my main work. And it's like, my main work is actually exactly what you're talking about right there. And the interactions of it into and out of water and in these monoatomic states and the different ionic and charged states of elements, and how electrical charge interaction with them and with water and salts, you get like just the plasmoid reaction and possibility, and without the need for having a big like ionized like arc or hot plasma amounts. But if you get that, there's that reaction and that interaction with all matter and material, and it's at the water level and the anode cathode level and the structure of the materials on the nanoscale, and it's engineering that. When you get that, then it's like you get the lattice layers that then turn something into like 1 trillion times, which like usually the force and the interaction is like 1/trillionth of anything useful. But when you get that one right thing, and then it's like, boom, you got a fucking 10 trillion of them. And then it's like, all of a sudden, it takes just a tap, and that tap of energy gives you an entire phase or state change, or like a crystallization matter change, like the bonds between atoms shift, move, break, and like huge amounts of energy happen and are usable, and that is where the true.
So you created a pulse inside of it. So you went from a resonance frequency to a resident frequency, which is two frequencies in resonance with a pulse wave.
Yes, that's
what breaks structure, because it's a powerful wave.
That's exactly what I am looking to engineer and develop and need, and we can create anything out of anything.
Well, that's what the little piezo buzzers do. They create a pulse wave.
Yeah, see, I was saying the piezo. Yeah, okay, piezo. But yes.
So they create a little pulse wave that goes in there, and if you have something in resonance, it excites it and pushes more plasma out the other end. It literally forces a higher amount of energy to come out the other side of that coil. That's what it does.
That is the key. And what?
It's an over unity device. I mean, think about it. It's literally an over unity device in your system because it's amplifying what's in there already. It's taking that same frequency of that coil and repeating it back to itself and pushing more of the amount out of it. Now, how many times is it hitting or which frequencies is it hitting? It might hit them all. If it does, you can end up, instead of a little spark, a big spark. So the engineering is fairly simple to some of this stuff. You just got to follow the flow of the energy and which way it wants to run. You know what I mean? Just show me the energy, how it flows, and then follow the nature of it. You know what I mean? That's all you got to do, just like Schauberger did. Just follow the flow, find out where it turns, where it likes to be doubled up at. You know what I mean?
Exactly what I've been observing, doing, and working with and on, and we are on many of the same wavelengths, my friends.
Nice.
And it's why we're discussing exactly this. I'm sorry, I got to take a call for 1 minute.
Go for it.
Do you got stuff you want to talk about, or would you like me to start and play a little bit of the Nassim video?
Go ahead and play his video so I can see what he's doing.
Okay. Right. Here we go. So it's like it's starting from the dimensional.
You crazy mother. Yeah.
It's just BurnEye. BurnEye just like last week, huh?
Weekend at Bernie's.